Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever in the world you are. Today's Educast podcast title is Leadership That Shapes Learning. Our theme will revolve around educational leadership in context from practice to impact. Today we will be with Henry Mensah. We will be discussing education in the heart of learning and beyond policy, beyond titles, into the lived realities of schools and classrooms. What does education truly mean? More importantly, what kind of leadership actually transforms learning? Joining me today is Henry Mensah, an international educator, a researcher, a curriculum expert whose work spans across continents and classrooms, and a dear friend of mine. Welcome, Henry.
Thank you very much, Ambega. This is a generous introduction, and I appreciate the description given me.
Okay, so could I just start with the first question? So let's begin with something very foundational, which is what is the primary purpose of education leadership?
Yes, Ambega, before I start answering this question, I consider this a very important topic because it's as you said, foundational question, and this program in its entirety, it's a very important program. So I'll be referring to the academic literature. I may not mention too many names, but you see me shuttling between documents. And so with that background, let me say that at the core of educational leadership is what we call the improvement of teaching and learning. Leaders are there, educational leaders are there to ensure that teaching and learning take place in the classroom. And they take place in the classroom in ways that will benefit the students. And the students will acquire the knowledge that they need throughout their academic career. Beyond that, it is also supposed to create a congenial environment in the classroom and around the school for teachers and students to thrive. Thriving in the school is very important because education basically is a lifelong pursuit. And so if they thrive in the classroom, if the educational environment is congenial, this helps them to prepare for the future. And so thriving is key. So this means that educational leaders build a vision, align resources that they have, and create an environment where learning is not only possible, but meaningful and transformative. Transformative here is a critical part of education. It's not just transformational, but transformative, that it has a long-term effect on the students. Mm-hmm. It is also important to note that good leadership also helps the students to, and teachers as well, to help their well-being. It helps their well-being. Well-being is very important because we have come, especially in international context, where students and teachers have come from different environments, cultural backgrounds. They need to get together, gel, and work together. So yes, it's very important. And particularly for students, safeguarding their welfare is critical. So anyone who wants to go into international education must understand these things. So basically, yes.
It's important for a leader to have direction and vision, mission, and understand the school needs to align in line with the goals and the mission and the vision of the school as well. So having a good leader is very important, and leadership. Can we move on? Thank you for that, Henry. There's a very fine distinction between effective and successful leadership. Can you explain to us what's the difference?
Yeah, the difference is very subtle and sometimes difficult to explain, but I'll try my best. Now let's take the distinction from the words themselves, effective leadership and successful leadership. So effective here is different from successful. Effective leadership focuses on the day-to-day activities of school, although it has in it the background, the vision, the mission, and the other things that the school is supposed to achieve. So effective leadership is about how leadership is practiced on a daily basis. And it focuses on the processes, strong teaching, collaboration, and a positive school culture.
Yes.
Things are very important. School culture is something, the way we do things on a daily basis, what distinguishes us from other schools. So that if
The
you go
school
to
climate.
the school climate, you go to school A, there's a certain distinction, or there's some characteristics that you see that will distinguish them from another school. So the school culture is important, and it must be positive, so that when students are coming to school, when teachers are coming to school, they feel happy and comfortable to be in the school environment. Successful leadership, on the other hand, is what leadership achieves, and it is measured in terms of not just student performance in examinations, in summative assessments, but also their growth in the long term and the institutional growth of the school, so that successful leadership will ensure that even after the students have left the school can do some kind of tracer studies to find out how they fare.
Yes.
If education is successful, in that sense, you realize that people, even students, the alumnus, keep returning to the school. So that's the distinction, basic distinction between the two. However, the purpose of leadership is to ensure that teaching and learning take place.
Thank you for that, Henry. So just to elaborate a little bit more, so then what are the indicators of successful leadership and why does it matter?
Yes, indicators of successful leadership matter in the sense that it provides the benchmarks for measuring whatever we are doing in the school. Mm-hmm. And we do not have these indicators, not just in terms of our daily routine activities, but documented. So the indicators must be documented for us to
retain. Are you saying policy and procedure?
Policy, the large policy, the long-term policy goals, the procedures. So you look at it from a strategic point of view and a tactical point of view, or an operational point of view. Strategically, what is the long-term vision of the school? Operationally,
would you say like a 3 to 5 year goal?
Excellent. That's international education. Is always the 3 to 5 year goal, and then you get institutions such as the Council of International Schools coming to evaluate what you have done over the period. I'm sure we should talk about the role of
international accreditations.
Accreditation later in this program. So it must be documented in a way that is measurable. Now, leadership risks is also important. Leadership risk. What do leaders do? What are the risks that they take, and to ensure that the school is transforming and growing and becoming better? It is performative in the sense that it is actionable. You must see the signs. Mm-hmm. Yes, and then it also ensures accountability. One of the things that we find in most schools, or in schools that do not do well, is a lack of accountability.
I so much agree with you. It's just amazing the way accountability is just passed on from person to person, and nobody wants to step up and take responsibility. It's always passed on to the next person. This is I would say I'd like to discuss this further at another episode. I'm really passionate about being accountable, because if we are on the wrong side or we make a mistake, it's so important. Forget about being leaders. It's just so important as a human being just to get up and say, listen, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and move on about it. That just takes a big person to do that. And it's so hard to find individuals that are in these positions that are able to actually apologize and move on, or to take responsibility, as you said.
Yeah, and accountability also relates to students. Mm-hmm. How teachers are accountable to students for their work. assessments, evaluation,
Yes.
and
For consideration.
yes,
And it shows how you role model yourself to your teachers. It shows how, as a teacher, you role model yourself in the classroom, and your students know and understand you, and they could see you coming from a very ethical angle, in the sense that the way you present yourself to in your classroom and to the institute as a whole.
yes.
It's very
And
reflective
so
of who
when
you are.
you do that, you build trust. Trust
Absolutely.
is very important.
Yes.
Even in the classroom, the students need to trust you to be able to listen to what you say and accept what you say. If they do not trust you, anything you say in the classroom does not work. And
Besides that, if they don't trust you, learning may not take place as well.
yes, without trust, learning will not take place.
Learning will not
Because
take place.
if you have been a teacher for a while, sometimes when you are teaching and you yourself are not confident about the subject you are teaching, you realize that the students look at each other, wondering whether
Yes.
you are giving them the information that is.
I think in international arena, students have this very great capability of spotting you immediately.
Absolutely.
Your subject knowledge, your ability to deliver your content. It's one of the first things the students look for here in China, to understand what is your knowledge, your level of your knowledge, for you to impart that knowledge to us.
Yes, I
So,
actually experienced that in Namibia too. When students come to the classroom asking you questions, attempting to test your knowledge, as it were,
yes,
you are
yes.
unable to answer some of their questions. They go back and say, this teacher might not be a good teacher. So
But it's
leadership,
also very important for a teacher to stop and say, listen, I'm not too sure about this. Can I come back to you?
absolutely.
That also builds trust, because you are not passing on incorrect information. We are human beings as well. We don't know everything. Every life is dynamic. We learn something new every day. So, and in my subject, in humanities and geography, there's an earthquake, volcano, there's flooding taking place, economic geography is happening. So I may not know everything, but it's important as well to not to fear to say, listen, I'm not sure about this. Can I get back to you? For me, that's very important.
Absolutely. And even in the teaching of literature, particularly, where you teach literature to students who do not belong to a particular geographical area, they
Yeah.
have certain assumptions. And so for me, teaching literature at Yulin College, for example, students will ask you about Africa. So you're
Yes.
teaching a story that is set in Nigeria, and they are assuming that the same things happen in Ghana. So they
Yeah.
ask you a question, and you say, no, this is particularly Nigerian. So I'm not sure. I need to find out, because this question I did not actually prepare for. And then they earn your trust, because you don't go telling them untruths in the classroom. So,
Absolutely. And they go research you, eh? Young
yes,
kids today go and research, did you say the right thing? And they would come back. So important that we touched on context, because my next question is we touched on context in our previous podcast as well. So
yes.
my question to you is the importance of context in
Context is absolutely
educational.
important. Context is absolutely important. I think I also mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts. And it is very important for the school and leaders to be able to identify the micro context and the macro context in which they work. We talked about some of the characteristics of context earlier, but today I'm going to emphasize on the fact that no school operates in isolation. No school operates in isolation. Socio-economic realities determine who comes to the school. A school where, quote unquote, they charge high fees, for example, will attract a certain class of,
Absolutely.
yes, and they come with their own understanding of the world and their own understanding of education. They look at education from a commodified point of view. Education
Yeah.
is going to offer them opportunities outside their immediate environment. For example, teaching in an international school, most students want to go to the best schools in the world. So that context is very important. So leadership must understand that. Cultural context is important. The cultural context of the host institution is the first point of reference. So that if
Yes.
you're teaching in Ghana, the cultural context is different. You go to South Africa, it's different. Then you go to China, it is different.
It's different.
Yes, we shall talk about culture and cultural nuances and what we call cultural intelligence in some
Yes.
of our podcasts.
Yes.
So leadership must understand this, otherwise you fail. Policy environment, macro policy environment. All
Yes.
those national schools are usually private schools. They work
Yes.
within countries, and the countries have their educational policies that the school must align with. International policies about education. Where are the students headed after they finish school? What are the requirements for getting into some universities, especially those that are preparing students for universities abroad? These policies are important. Accreditation institutions, what do they require of the school? Very important. Curriculum expectation. You are teaching IB, you are teaching Cambridge, you are teaching AP. They have different curriculum and teaching approaches. And even the history of the institution. It's important. History of the
Yes.
institution you're working. Leaders must
Yes.
understand this. So you cannot work.
Yes, it's very important for new leaders to understand, especially if they come in and they need to make decisions. It's important for them to take some time to understand the history of the organization, history of the leadership. Have a look at the goals and the vision and the mission that was taking place. Because schools that have been in existence for 10, 20 years, it's like you have people come in and they want to show that they know something more than the predecessor, or you cannot reinvent the wheel. The wheel
No,
has
you don't
already
have
been
to.
turning for some
You don't
time.
have to reinvent the wheel.
Yes. But the possibility of strategically changing some aspects that probably are on a decline, or maybe making some improvements on already existing policies and procedures are there. But what I notice is that you find new people coming in and want to make drastic changes. And I think that is a very wrong thing to do. You lose a lot of trust. People that have been in the institute for a long time, they lose their vision, and they feel like they no longer belong to an institution that they knew before. Obviously, change is going to happen. Change is going to happen. But the way it happens and the way leaders filter it down is also very important.
Absolutely. And it's a recipe for failure if you ignore the history of an
Yes,
institution or the school that
I
you're working
agree.
in. Finally, relationship with parents and what we generally call stakeholders. And parents are the most important stakeholders, especially in the international. It's an investment for them. It is not just bringing their children to school to come and study geography, learn about riverbanks, learn about concepts in literature, in history, in mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology. It is where they are headed. It is very important to them. And so you must engage. Leadership engages parents and other stakeholders. So if you do this and you do it well, your leadership does not only become effective, but in the long term will be successful.
Absolutely. Understanding the context of communication with the parents is very important as well. So be consistently communicating, and as international staff in a international school, we cannot understand the local dynamics. So in these cases, the local staff handle the parents more effectively than I would, because it's very important, or not, beside being important, the local staff will understand what needs to be said from a social context of acceptance between the parents, where I may not understand it as well unless I teach myself, or I'm here for a long period of time. I
So
will
when we think
basically
about
understand what's a yes or what's a no, or how should I go about expressing myself. Because the way I express myself could be offensive to you. So
Yes.
it's so important to understand the context of the culture that we are in.
Yes. So we'll do a podcast on cultural intelligence and international education. I'm sure it will be
Yeah,
an interesting
yeah,
podcast. Yes.
yeah. Can we move on to instructional leadership in context? Maybe you can narrow instructional leadership down, and how does it influence leadership within the school?
Yes. So let's begin from as an English teacher, I enjoy using um, uh, what they call muffins to discuss. So let me begin with what instruction is. Instruction to instruct is to ask somebody to do something, basically. So you
Yes,
instruct.
the basic English definition.
Yes, to instruct is to ask somebody to do something. And where do teachers instruct? Where? In the classroom.
Classroom.
Yes. But a better word for instruct will be teaching or pedagogy.
Yes.
Yes. So that it is not a top-down approach, but a shared, yes, relationship that you have with students. And instructional leadership or pedagogical leadership focuses on teaching and learning. Nothing more, nothing less. So, good instructional leadership begins with something I've always been having an argument with, but today I think I'm going to take your position. It begins with content knowledge.
Yes.
Content
I
knowledge
think
is critical.
content is very important, especially in the humanities department with content-heavy subjects.
Yes.
That becomes a very, very challenging aspect for a teacher to teach second language students.
Yes.
And also, you must understand we have a time frame from our within our curriculum, 180 hours. So, do I push content, and then I cover content, and then I start maybe review, or do I teach to exam? What is my expectation for my students? For me, I would rather make sure that I teach my content and my students understand my content, because my subject is content heavy, as opposed to just teaching to exam.
Yes.
I prefer more understanding takes place, because when understanding takes place, the learning takes place, and you can write down what you understand and what you've learned in my class.
Absolutely. Then
Yeah.
followed by instructional leadership is followed by acquisition of skills that the students need.
Analysis,
Yes.
especially in my subject.
Yes. And then the next one is what we look at as pedagogy, your relationship. What methods are you using in the classroom?
Teaching methodology.
Yes, teaching methodology to instruct. What kind of approach are you using? Are you lecturing? Are you using an inquiry-based learning method? Are you flipping the classroom? All these things.
Yes.
Is it dialogic teaching?
Yes.
Is your role a facilitator? Is your role an instructor or a facilitator? Do you take a withdrawn position so that students have discussions in the classrooms? All these things are important for instruction. Now, demographics are also important, especially in an international school. Where have the
Yes.
students come from? What is their age? What can they imbibe at a particular time? How
Yes.
heavy is the content for them? Because, for example, international curriculum can be content heavy, as you have said. Even in subjects like literature, where we teach skills, the number
Yes.
of books that a student is
Has to read.
has to read could be daunting for the students. And
Yes.
so all these things must be understood. And the teacher, as we have already said, must also be culturally responsive in the
Yes.
classroom. We are teaching in a typical international school of about 54 or 20 nationalities in a classroom. Some vocabulary could be offensive.
Yes.
Approach to teaching, even the way you stand, could be offensive. So all these things play a role in instructional leadership. But ultimately, instructional leadership is aimed at ensuring that the students acquire the knowledge that they are expected to acquire to be able to take part in high stakes examination and perform well to their ability. All of
Yes.
us cannot get A's and A stars, but
It's your input and your output, basically.
yes,
And your instructional leader has to also make sure the teacher has resources, professional development, continuous performance. I wouldn't say review, but an analyze where your teacher needs help, or maybe intervene where different teaching strategies or teaching methods should come into play. But this shouldn't come from coming to my class once or two times a quarter or semester and then deciding this what works. I think it should be continuous engagement as to how teaching and learning takes place, how instruction takes place, according to the level of the students. How would you differentiate in the class? What methods would we use? Currently, I am practicing a little bit of translanguaging, which we will talk about in another podcast. And I'm using some AI tools to help me with the translanguaging. Obviously, as you mentioned, with me, I'm in China, so I'm in an international school that I deliver my content in English, and I have Chinese students. But if you go into international school where they have 10, 15 different students from different countries, then that becomes a little bit more difficult to manage as well. So again, context matters.
absolutely, absolutely.
Can we move on to talk about distributed leadership? Do you think it promotes best practice? What do you think the success depends on?
I'll do it quickly since I think we are running out of time.
Time, yes.
Yes, I'll do this one very quickly. Distributed leadership works when it is intentional, not accidental. That
Yes.
the purpose is to, I'm going to do a secular definition, to distribute the work for other people to do. But the purpose basically is to build a team, consensus, we agree to disagree, but everybody gets a responsibility, the shared responsibility, and people feel part of the educational process, as it were. I will not belabor the point, but it works well with instructional leadership. And so I'm sure in another podcast we can focus deeply on distributed leadership, which is a recent concept in education.
Yes. Yeah, they say there's not much research or studies on it, but I think there's adequate to talk about. I think that the shortfall in this one is that where teachers or people in the institute or in the team feel that work is handed down. We could talk about that another day, but just as we end off, I think there's something that I'm also very passionate about, which is collective responsibility. Can you tell us a little bit about what is collective responsibility?
Collective responsibility is it's a very nuanced term. Collective in the sense that we all take decisions. We take decisions as a team, as a group, as a school. If we are successful, we all take the credit. If
Yes.
we fail, we all
Everyone
share
takes
the blame.
responsibility.
Yes, that is the basics of collective responsibility. And when a school sets out that everything that it does must be collectively done, I'm going in seconds. No teacher or no principal should go and say and stand out and tell parents, for example, that I did not know about this decision. This decision has
Yes.
come to me as a surprise.
Transparency is important.
Yes. And we should all trust each other. When we make a mistake, we meet and correct the mistakes together. When we are successful, we take the credit and enjoy the glory together.
I think what would sadden me about this whole situation is that somewhere along the line, individuals forget that they are dealing with young, the minds of young people who can be very impressionable, who we have the ability to change their way of thinking. So, yes, we understand international education is also a business, but we are dealing with the livelihoods of people and the future generation. So being collectively responsible is really important to me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And before we end, let me read from the literature. The source is AERA, and it says what we know about successful school leadership. I quote, scratch the surface of an excellent school, and you are likely to find an excellent principal that is a leader. Peer into a failing school, and you will find weak leadership. So leadership is absolutely crucial
Crucial.
for effectiveness and also for success of.
Yes. I
Thank you.
remember that quotation
Yes.
very well. Thank
Yes.
you, Henry. It's been a really, really interesting conversation. To our viewers and listeners out there, if you like our content, please like, subscribe. Please message us with questions that you have. Also, if you want us to engage in conversations that you feel are important to you, drop us a message and we will respond to you. Thank you, Henry. I know it's early in the morning there with you, but it's late in the evening here for me. I have work tomorrow. Thank you for this enlightening conversation, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thank you very much, Ambega.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.